On 1 July 2006, a web-posted message purportedly written by Osama bin Laden urged Somalis to build an Islamic state in the country and warned Western governments that the al-Qaeda network would fight against them if they intervened there. 146. The Prime Minister of Somalia claimed that 3 terror suspects from the 1998 United States Embassy bombings are being sheltered in Kismayo. 147. On 30 December 2006, al-Qaeda deputy leader Ayman al-Zawahiri called upon Muslims worldwide to fight against Ethiopia and the TFG in Somalia. 148. On 8 January 2007, the U.S. launched the Battle of Ras Kamboni by bombing Ras Kamboni using AC-130 gunships. 149. On 14 September 2009, U.S. Special Forces killed 2 men and wounded and captured 2 others near the Somali village of Baro. Witnesses claim that helicopters used for the operation launched from French-flagged warships, but that could not be confirmed. A Somali-based al-Qaeda-affiliated group, the Al-Shabaab, has verified the death of Sheikh commander Sail Ali Sail Nabhan, along with an unspecified number of militants. 150 Nabhan, a Kenyan, was wanted in connection with the 2002 Mombasa attacks. 151. Military operations by country. Iraq War. Main article, Iraq War. Further information, Iraq War and the War on Terror. 2002 State of the Union Address. Main article, Axis of Evil. During his 2002 State of the Union Address, George W. Bush accused North Korea, Iran, and Iraq of propping up state-sponsored terrorism and pursuing weapons of mass destruction. These countries were portrayed as a global threat and categorized under the terminology referred to as Axis of Evil. 152. Regarding Iraq, Bush alleged. Iraq continues to flaunt its hostility toward America and to support terror. The Iraqi regime has plotted to develop anthrax and nerve gas and nuclear weapons for over a decade. This is a regime that has already used poison gas to murder thousands of its own citizens, leaving the bodies of mothers huddled over their dead children. This is a regime that agreed to international inspections, then kicked out the inspectors. This is a regime that has something to hide from the civilized world. 153. Prelude. Further information. Preparations for 2003 invasion of Iraq and Saddam, al-Qaeda conspiracy theory. In October 2002, United States Congress passed the Authorization for Use of Military Force Against Iraq Resolution of 2002, which empowered the U.S. President to order military attack against Iraq. 154-155. On 5 February 2003, Secretary of State Colin Powell made a presentation before the UN Security Council, which claimed to implicate Iraq in building a secret WMD program and having ties to al-Qaeda. 156. On 17 March 2003, Bush issued an ultimatum to Saddam Hussein and his 2 sons to flee Iraq within a 48-hour deadline or else face military conflict. 157. Justifying his policy, Bush declared, "Terrorists and terror states do not reveal these threats with fair notice, informal declarations, and responding to such enemies only after they have struck first is not self-defense, it is suicide. The security of the world requires disarming Saddam Hussein now." 157. Invasion of Iraq. Main article, 2003 Invasion of Iraq. A British C-130J Hercules aircraft launches flare countermeasures before being the first coalition aircraft to land on the newly reopened military runway at Baghdad International Airport. The Iraq War began in March 2003 with an air campaign, which was immediately followed by a U.S.-led ground invasion. 158-159. The Bush administration cited UNSC Resolution 1441, which warned of serious consequences for violations such as Iraq possessing weapons of mass destruction. The Bush administration also stated the Iraq War was part of the War on Terror, a claim later questioned and contested. Iraq had been listed as a state sponsor of terrorism by the U.S. since 1990, 160, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. The first ground attack came at the Battle of Qasr on 21 March 2003, when a combined force of British, U.S. and Polish forces seized control of the port city of Qasr. 161 Baghdad, Iraq's capital city, fell to U.S. troops in April 2003, and Saddam Hussein's government quickly dissolved. 162. On 1 May 2003, Bush announced that major combat operations in Iraq had ended. 163. Iraqi insurgency, 2003-11. Main article, Iraqi insurgency. However, an insurgency arose against the U.S.-led coalition and the newly developing Iraqi military and post-Saddam government. The rebellion, which included al-Qaeda-affiliated groups, led to many coalition casualties. Other elements of the insurgency were led by fugitive members of President Hussein's Ba'ath regime, which included Iraqi nationalists and pan-Arabists. Many insurgency leaders were Islamists and claimed to be fighting a religious war to re-establish the Islamic Caliphate of centuries past. 164. Saddam Hussein was captured by U.S. forces in December 2003 and was executed in 2006. In 2004, the insurgent forces grew stronger. The U.S. launched offensives on insurgent strongholds in cities like Najaf and Fallujah. In January 2007, President Bush presented a new strategy for Operation Iraqi Freedom, based upon counterinsurgency theories and tactics developed by General David Petraeus. The Iraq war troop surge of 2007 was part of this new way forward, which, along with U.S. backing of Sunni groups it had previously sought to defeat, has been credited with a widely recognized dramatic decrease in violence by up to 80%. Citation needed. The war entered a new phase on 1 September 2010, 165, with the official end of U.S. combat operations. War in Iraq, 2013-17. Main article, War in Iraq, 2013-2017. President Obama ordered the withdrawal of most troops in 2011, but began redeploying forces in 2014 to fight the Islamic State group. 166. As of July 2021, there were approximately 2,500 U.S. troops in Iraq, who continue to assist in the mission to combat the remnants of IS. 167. Pakistan. Main articles, Pakistan and the War on Terror, Insurgency in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and Pakistan and State-Sponsored Terrorism. See also, Drone Strikes in Pakistan, List of drone strikes in Pakistan, Killing of Osama bin Laden and Pakistan, United States relations. Following 11 September attacks, former President of Pakistan Pervez Musharraf sided with the U.S. against the Taliban government in Afghanistan after an ultimatum by then U.S. President George W. Bush. Musharraf agreed to give the U.S. the use of 3 air bases for Operation Enduring Freedom. United States Secretary of State Colin Powell and other U.S. administration officials met with Musharraf. On 19 September 2001, Musharraf addressed the people of Pakistan and stated that, while he opposed military tactics against the Taliban, Pakistan risked being endangered by an alliance of India and the U.S. if it did not cooperate. In 2006, Musharraf testified that this stance was pressured by threats from the U.S. and revealed in his memoirs that he had war-gamed the United States as an adversary and decided that it would end in a loss for Pakistan. 168. On 12 January 2002, Musharraf gave a speech against Islamic extremism. He unequivocally condemned all acts of terrorism and pledged to combat Islamic extremism and lawlessness within Pakistan itself. He stated that his government was committed to rooting out extremism and made it clear that the banned militant organizations would not be allowed to resurface under any new name. He said, "The recent decision to ban extremist groups promoting militancy was taken in the national interest after thorough consultations. It was not taken under any foreign influence." 169. In 2002, the Musharraf-led government took a firm stand against the jihadi organizations and groups promoting extremism and arrested Maulana Masood Azhar, head of the Jaish-e-Mohammed, and Hafiz Mohammed Saeed, chief of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, and took dozens of activists into custody. An official ban was imposed on the groups on 12 January 170. Later that year, the Saudi-born Zain al-Abidin Muhammad Hassan Abu Zubaydah was arrested by Pakistani officials during a series of joint U.S. Pakistan raids. Zubaydah is said to have been a high-ranking al-Qaeda official with the title of Operations Chief and in charge of running al-Qaeda training camps. 171. Other prominent al-Qaeda members were arrested in the following 2 years, namely Ramzi bin al-Shib, who is known to have been a financial backer of al-Qaeda operations, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who at the time of his capture was the third highest-ranking official in al-Qaeda and had been directly in charge of the planning for 11 September attacks. In 2004, the Pakistan Army launched a campaign in the federally administered tribal areas of Pakistan's Waziristan region, sending in 80,000 troops. The goal of the conflict was to remove the al-Qaeda and Taliban forces in the area. After the fall of the Taliban regime, many members of the Taliban resistance fled to the northern border region of Afghanistan and Pakistan, where the Pakistani army had previously little control. With the logistics and air support of the United States, the Pakistani army captured or killed numerous al-Qaeda operatives such as Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, wanted for his involvement in the USS Cole bombing, the Bajinka plot, and the killing of Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl. The United States has carried out a campaign of drone attacks on targets all over the federally administered tribal areas. However, the Pakistani Taliban still operates there. To this day, it is estimated that 15 U.S. soldiers were killed while fighting al-Qaeda and Taliban remnants in Pakistan since the War on Terror began. 172. Osama bin Laden, his wife and son, were all killed on 2 May 2011 during a raid conducted by the United States Special Operations Forces in Abbottabad, Pakistan. 173. The use of drones by the Central Intelligence Agency in Pakistan to carry out operations associated with the global war on terror sparks debate over sovereignty and the laws of war. The U.S. government uses the CIA rather than the U.S. Air Force for strikes in Pakistan to avoid breaching sovereignty through military invasion. The United States was criticized by according to whom? A report on drone warfare and aerial sovereignty for abusing the term global war on terror to carry out military operations through government agencies without formally declaring war. After 11 September attacks, U.S. economic and security aid to Pakistan spiked considerably. With the authorization of the Enhanced Partnership for Pakistan Act, Pakistan was granted $7.5 billion over 5 years from FY 2010, FY 2014. 174. Yemen. Main articles: Al-Qaeda insurgency in Yemen, drone strikes in Yemen, Yemeni civil war, 2014-present, Red Sea crisis, Operation Prosperity Guardian, and 2024 missile strikes in Yemen. This section needs to be updated. Please help update this article to reflect recent events or newly available information. March 2025. The United States has conducted a series of military strikes on al-Qaeda militants in Yemen since the War on Terror began. 175. Yemen has a weak central government and a powerful tribal system that leaves large, lawless areas open for militant training and operations. Al-Qaeda has a strong presence in the country. 176. On 31 March 2011, AQAP declared the Al-Qaeda emirate in Yemen after it's captured most of Abiyan Governorate. 177. The U.S., in an effort to support Yemeni counterterrorism efforts, increased their military aid package to Yemen from less than $11 million in 2006 to more than $70 million in 2009, as well as providing up to $121 million for development over the next 3 years. 178. In 2024, the U.S. redesignated the Houthis as specially designated global terrorists in the context of the Red Sea crisis, Operation Prosperity Guardian and Operation Poseidon Archer. The military campaign is still ongoing as of January 2024. 179. The Houthis have admitted to teaming up with al-Qaeda since 2023. 180. Since then, the alliance remains ongoing under the context of the Red Sea crisis. 181. Other military operations. Operation Inherent Resolve, Syria and Iraq. Main articles. Operation Inherent Resolve, military intervention against ISIL, and list of wars and battles involving ISIL. Further information. American-led intervention in Iraq, 2014-2021, spillover of the Syrian Civil War, and American-led intervention in Syria. U.S. soldiers in Syria during Operation Inherent Resolve. This section needs to be updated. Please help update this article to reflect recent events or newly available information. February 2025. The Obama administration began to re-engage in Iraq with a series of airstrikes aimed at ISIL starting on 10 August 2014. 182. On 9 September 2014, President Obama said that he had the authority he needed to take action to destroy the militant group known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, citing the 2001 authorization for the use of military force against terrorists, and thus did not require additional approval from Congress. 183. The following day, on 10 September 2014, President Barack Obama made a televised speech about ISIL, which he stated, "Our objective is clear. We will degrade and ultimately destroy ISIL through a comprehensive and sustained counterterrorism strategy." 184. Obama has authorized the deployment of additional U.S. forces into Iraq, as well as authorizing direct military operations against ISIL within Syria. 184. On the night of 21-22 September, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, Jordan and Qatar started air attacks against ISIL in Syria. 185. In October 2014, it was reported that the U.S. Department of Defense considers military operations against ISIL as being under Operation Enduring Freedom in regards to campaign medal awarding. 186. On 15 October, the military intervention became known as Operation Inherent Resolve. 187. Islamic State of Lano and the Battle of Marawi. With the rise of the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, jihadist offshoots sprung up in regions around the world, including the Philippines. The Maute Group, composed of former Moro Islamic Liberation Front guerrillas and foreign fighters led by Omar Maute, the alleged founder of Adala Islamia, declared loyalty to ISIL and began clashing with Philippine security forces and staging bombings. On 23 May 2017, the group attacked the city of Marawi, resulting in the bloody Battle of Marawi that lasted 5 months. After the decisive battle, remnants of the group were reportedly still recruiting in 2017 and 2018. 188-189. Libyan War. Main articles. Factional violence in Libya, 2011-2014. Libyan Civil War, 2014-2020, and American intervention in Libya, 2015-2019. An AV-8B Harrier takes off from the flight deck of USS Wasp during Operation Odyssey Lightning, 8 August 2016. NBC News reported that in mid-2014, ISIL had about 1,000 fighters in Libya, taking advantage of a power vacuum in the center of the country. Far from the major cities of Tripoli and Benghazi, ISIL expanded rapidly over the next 18 months. Local militants were joined by jihadists from the rest of North Africa, the Middle East, Europe, and the Caucasus. The force absorbed or defeated other Islamist groups inside Libya, and the central ISIL leadership in Raqqa, Syria, began urging foreign recruits to head for Libya instead of Syria. ISIL seized control of the coastal city of Sirte in early 2015 and then began to expand to the east and south. By the beginning of 2016, it had effective control of 120 to 150 miles of coastline and portions of the interior, and had reached eastern Libya's major population center, Benghazi. In spring 2016, AFRICOM estimated that ISIL had about 5,000 fighters in its stronghold of Sirte, 190. However, the indigenous rebel groups who had staked their claims to Libya and turned their weapons on ISIL, with the help of airstrikes by Western forces, including U.S. drones, the Libyan population resented the outsiders who wanted to establish a fundamentalist regime on their soil. Militias loyal to the new Libyan unity government, plus a separate and rival force loyal to a former officer in the Gaddafi regime, launched an assault on ISIL outposts in Sirte and the surrounding areas that lasted for months. According to U.S. military estimates, ISIL rank shrank to somewhere between a few hundred and 2,000 fighters. In August 2016, the U.S. military began airstrikes that, along with continued pressure on the ground from the Libyan militias, pushed the remaining ISIL fighters back into Sirte. In all, U.S. drones and planes hit ISIL nearly 590 times. The Libyan militias reclaimed the city in mid-December, 190 on 18 January 2017. ABC News reported that 2 USAF B-2 bombers struck 2 ISIL camps 28 miles, 45 km south of Sirte. The airstrikes targeted between 80 and 100 ISIL fighters in multiple camps. An unmanned aircraft also participated in the airstrikes. NBC News reported that as many as 90 ISIL fighters were killed in the strike. A U.S. defense official said that this was the largest remaining ISIL presence in Libya, and that they have been largely marginalized, but I am hesitant to say they have been eliminated in Libya. American military intervention in Cameroon. In October 2015, the U.S. began deploying 300 soldiers 191 to Cameroon with the invitation of the Cameroonian government to support African forces in a non-combat role in their fight against ISIL insurgency in that country. The troops' primary missions will revolve around providing intelligence support to local forces as well as conducting reconnaissance flights. 192. Operation Active Endeavor. Main article, Operation Active Endeavor. Operation Active Endeavor was a naval operation of NATO started in October 2001 in response to 11 September attacks. It operated in the Mediterranean and was designed to prevent the movement of militants or weapons of mass destruction and to enhance the security of shipping in general. 193. Fighting in Kashmir. Main article, Kashmir conflict. Political map, the Kashmir region districts. In a letter to American people written by Osama bin Laden in 2002, he stated that one of the reasons he was fighting America is because of its support of India on the Kashmir issue. 194-195 Indian sources claimed that in 2006, al-Qaeda claimed they had established a wing in Kashmir. This worried the Indian government. 196. India also argued that al-Qaeda has strong ties with the Kashmir militant groups Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed in Pakistan. 197. While on a visit to Pakistan in January 2010, U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates stated that al-Qaeda was seeking to destabilize the region and planning to provoke a nuclear war between India and Pakistan. 198. In September 2009, a U.S. drone strike reportedly killed Ilyas Kashmiri, who was the chief of Harkat-ul-Jihad al-Islami, a Kashmiri militant group associated with al-Qaeda. 199-200 Kashmiri was described by Bruce Riedel as a prominent al-Qaeda member, 201, while others described him as the head of military operations for al-Qaeda. 202. Waziristan had now become the new battlefield for Kashmiri militants, who were now fighting NATO in support of al-Qaeda. 203. On 8 July 2012, al-Badr Mujahideen, a breakaway faction of Kashmir-centric terror group Hizbul Mujahideen, on the conclusion of their two-day Shuhada conference called for a mobilization of resources for continuation of jihad in Kashmir. 204. In June 2021, an Air Force station in Jammu, in India-administered Kashmir, was attacked by drone. Investigators were uncertain whether a state or non-state actor initiated the attack. 205-206. Anti-terror campaigns by other powers. As part of the Iran-Israel proxy conflict and the Iran-Saudi Arabia proxy conflict, both Israel and Saudi Arabia has engaged in its own war on terror against Iranian-backed insurgent groups and against al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, and Islamic State in Saudi Arabia's case. 207. Although Israel did not directly participate in the 2003 invasion of Iraq, it reportedly urged the U.S. not to delay an attack on Saddam Hussein. 208. Before the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, Israeli intelligence reportedly provided information to Washington. 209. Israel launched a 34-day military conflict against Hezbollah in Lebanon, northern Israel and the Golan Heights during mid-2006. 210. In Saudi Arabia's case, its own war on terror has been heightened by its intervention in the Yemeni civil war since March 26, 2015. Both al-Qaeda and the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, and Islamic State had a presence in Yemen before the Saudi-led intervention. 211. Colombia has also engaged on its own war on terror. 212-213. As terrorism by both guerrillas and paramilitaries remains a major concern in the country since the escalation of armed violence in the 2000s in the context of the Colombian conflict. 214. Alvaro Uribe's presidency, in particular, was marked by a significant focus on counter-terrorism and counterinsurgency. The counterterrorism measures of Plan Colombia acquired further expansion during the presidency of George W. Bush, and an important focus on national security after the events of 9/11, as the threat of global terrorism received greater attention. 215. In the 2010s, the People's Republic of China has also been engaged in its own war on terror. Predominantly a domestic campaign in response to violent actions by Uyghur separatist movements in the Xinjiang conflict. 216. This campaign was widely criticized in international media due to the perception that it unfairly targets and persecutes Chinese Muslims. 217. Potentially resulting in a negative backlash from China's predominantly Muslim Uyghur population. CCP General Secretary Xi Jinping's regime has imprisoned up to 2 million Uyghurs and other Muslim ethnic minorities in Xinjiang internment camps, where they are reportedly subject to abuse and torture. 218-219. Russia has also been engaged on its own, also largely internally focused, counterterrorism campaign often termed a war on terror during the Second Chechen War, the insurgency in the North Caucasus, and the Russian military intervention in the Syrian civil war. 220. Like China's war on terror, Russia has also been focused on separatist and Islamist movements that use political violence to achieve their ends. 221, however. Russia's disinformation and actions, as well as its inaction towards groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Taliban, have raised doubts about its commitment to the war on terror. 222. International military support. Main articles: Participants in Operation Enduring Freedom and Multinational Force, Iraq. See also, Coalition Combat Operations in Afghanistan in 2008 and Afghan War Order of Battle 2012. The United Kingdom was the second largest contributor of troops in Afghanistan. The invasion of Afghanistan is seen to have been the first action of this war, and initially involved forces from the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Afghan Northern Alliance. Since the initial invasion period, these forces were augmented by troops and aircraft from Australia, Canada, Denmark, France, Italy, Netherlands, New Zealand, and Norway, among others. In 2006, there were about 33,000 troops in Afghanistan. On 12 September 2001, less than 24 hours after 11 September attacks in New York City and Washington, D.C., NATO invoked Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty and declared the attacks to be an attack against all 19 NATO member countries. Australian Prime Minister John Howard also stated that Australia would invoke the ANZUS Treaty along similar lines. 223. In the following months, NATO took a broad range of measures to respond to the threat of terrorism. On 22 November 2002, the member states of the Euro-Atlantic Partnership Council, EAPC, decided on a partnership action plan against terrorism, which explicitly states, the EAPC states are committed to the protection and promotion of fundamental freedoms and human rights, as well as the rule of law in combating terrorism. 224. NATO started naval operations in the Mediterranean Sea designed to prevent the movement of terrorists or weapons of mass destruction, as well as to enhance the security of shipping in general, called Operation Active Endeavor. Support for the U.S. cooled when America made clear its determination to invade Iraq in late 2002. Still, many of the coalition of the willing countries that unconditionally supported the U.S.-led military action have sent troops to Afghanistan, particularly neighboring Pakistan, which has disowned its earlier support for the Taliban and contributed tens of thousands of soldiers to the conflict. Pakistan was also engaged in the insurgency in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, aka Waziristan War or Northwest Pakistan War. Supported by U.S. intelligence, Pakistan attempted to remove the Taliban insurgency and al-Qaeda element from the northern tribal areas. 225.